Hey guys, I've got okay. These slides are at turn voiceover off. Sorry. These are at pauljano.com/jQuery mobile A11Y. If you'd like to follow along. Since this is a mobile presentation, of course I admitted jQuery mobile, and I'm presenting from the iPad.
Safari, prep, dimmed, button, red mark,
Do you want to use the speakers?
Oh yeah, we got speakers now. Cool. Okay.
Twitter, content information, home, button, red mark, alert, app selected.
Oops. Don't tweet me while I'm presenting. Just kidding. Okay. So just to run through the slides real fast.
Navigation, prep, dimmed, button, red mark.
So it told me which landmark I'm going into, the navigation landmark. Said that the previous button is dim, that's indicating the disabled state.
Do you want to tell them what you're presenting from?
iPad? Yep. I'm on an iPad. Y'all can't tell. iOS 7 up here.
Mobile accessibility and jQuery mobile. Next, button.
So it has a button roll as well. Now, cool thing about VoiceOver, if I tap into another landmark, it tells me that which landmark I went into.
Content, main, mobile accessibility and jQuery mobile, heading level 1.
And I gave that main landmark an ARIA- label of the content, because I think that makes a little more sense.
Page 2 of 3. Page 3 of 3. Footer, content information, home, dimmed, button, red mark.
So that told me that we went into the content information landmark, but I gave it an accessible name of footer because that makes a little more sense.
Alert, app selected.
All right. So iOS, VoiceOver, and Zoom. I'm going to go over iOS and Android, and this is the settings in iOS 7. You see that you go to Settings, General, Accessibility. Please don't do this right now, unless you have headphones on, because you probably won't be able to figure out how to turn it off. You can prank people by turning VoiceOver on their phone, see if they can figure it out. So there's also a new cursor. This is a larger cursor than iOS 6, so it makes seeing the VoiceOver focus easier. And you know what I really love about Apple is that you can actually see my screen reader's focus. So they really designed VoiceOver for collaboration between sighted people and blind people. Whereas, JAWS is the most powerful screen reader, but when Berger's going through it, we have no idea what the visual focus is. We can only hear it. And that does make accessibility testing a little bit more difficult. And I think Apple has told a story where there was a blind developer who was in Braille, doing Braille, and then a sighted developer that were collaborating, and they really had to see the speech output. So that's why they have the caption panel as well, although there is no caption panel on iOS, just on OS 10. Oh, sorry guys. Try to do speakers in one voice. Okay. You can adjust the speaking rate from turtle to rabbit. And then the other thing that you want to pay attention to is the VoiceOver rotor. So respect the rotor. The rotor is your quick navigation keys. So, H for heading, B for button. Now you have the rotor to navigate by semantic elements on your page. New in iOS 7 is handwriting input. Somebody using VoiceOver can actually draw letters onto the touchscreen and it will input. So they can type in text and search for apps that way. Very interesting. You can navigate by containers, headings, images, links, tables, form controls, landmarks, buttons. Vertical navigation is necessary to go up and down data table cells, up the column, across the row, that sort of thing. So to use the rotor, you do a 2-finger rotation gesture like you're turning a knob, or you can use 2 hands. Keep rotating until you get to the semantic element you'd like to navigate by.
Safari, prep, button, handwriting, words, lines, speech rate, containers, headings, links,
Is my speech rate too fast?
containers,
Do I need to slow it
speech
down?
rate,
Okay.
container, heading, link, form, tables, lists, landmarks, content, name, item, footer, content information, home, button,
So once I get to the element I want to navigate by, then I swipe up or down to cycle forward and backwards.
content, navigation, landmark not found. Alert, act selected.
Here, navigate by landmarks is shown on the iPhone. There's also Zoom. System Zoom and VoiceOver can work together, and the Zoom view will follow VoiceOver cursor's focus. You turn on Zoom. 3-finger, double tap. Double tap with 3 fingers to zoom. Drag 3 fingers to move around the screen. And double tap and drag to increase and decrease the zoom level. So if we turn on VoiceOver,
Safari, prep, button, back, button,
see now as I cycle through, the focus will follow.
forward, share, bookmark, iCloud, new tech address, reload, closed, selected, navigate, iOS, voice, next, button. Oh, Safari, prep, button, landmark, app switcher,
Let me zoom out.
Safari, running. Alert, act selected, voice over off.
Okay, next thing on the list is subtitles and captioning. HTML5 with BTT captions are now supported. You can, the user can style the captions to look however they want them to look. So here I picked the large text style. And the accessibility shortcut. This is when I triple click the home button and it pulls up all the possible accessibility options that I chose to be in the accessibility shortcut. On my iPhone, I don't have any options, I just have VoiceOver on.
Mail, all inboxes.
So I just triple click,
Reminder, weekly status, voice over off. Voice over on. Voice over off.
so it's just that fast to turn VoiceOver on and off. So I can quickly do native testing, web testing very easily. So Apple recommends you put your shortcut on to VoiceOver so that you can do the same thing as a developer. I have a link to a presentation on iAccessibility where I go into a lot more detail on all the accessibility of iOS, although it's currently on iOS 6, so it needs to be updated. Notice on Windows Phone, because that was in the description, but Windows Phone is not accessible. There is no screen reader. Now on Windows 8 tablets, there is narrator built into the device, and they have really nice zoom functionality as well. The more powerful Windows 8 tablets can run JAWS, paid, or NVDA open source in modes that are optimized for touch use or with a normal keyboard. And I think those are still developing at the moment. So Android has talkback in Zoom. Zoom is pretty new in Android. We're talking Android 4.2, Jelly Bean and above. Everything below that is just terrible. So make sure you have that phone. Cool thing you can do is hold your hand over the proximity sensor on TalkBack on your phone to stop the speech. So it's kind of like, it's like iOS, you do 2-finger single tap, and like on JAWS, you press the control key to stop the speech. You can also shake the phone to start reading, read all, which is pretty neat. You can also display the speech output on Android, so you can actually get a visual output of the speech. However, it has really bad contrast, so you'll see here, it's not working out so well. Vibration feedback is also something that's different. As you move your fingers along the screen, you can feel the vibration feedback, haptic feedback, which is not possible in iOS. Android has a global context menu, which is similar to the rotor, but it's not. And it's a swipe gesture, either swipe up to the left or swipe down to the right or something like that. I can't quite remember. But you get access to quick navigation keys, read all commands. And then Explore by Touch, where you just move your fingers on the screen and you hear what is spoken. In Android settings, in the TalkBack settings, there's an Explore by Touch tutorial, which basically teaches you how to use TalkBack. So if you want to learn about TalkBack accessibility on your Android, just take this tutorial and you'll figure it out. There's also magnification, which is brand new in 4.2. I like magnification on Android better because on the iPhone I have to do 3-finger double tap. Now on an iPad that's not so bad, but on a phone I can't hold my phone with one hand and then magically put 3 fingers on it. I have to use 2 hands. Not everybody has 2 hands. But anyway, on Android, you just double tap, or you triple tap with 1 finger. Oops, I don't know if I have it turned on. And then it'll zoom in. So you can just do it one-handed. Or if you triple tap and then hold your finger, it does a temporary zoom. And you can slide your finger around the screen, and once you release your finger, it zooms back up to the normal level. If I can get to the end and there's still time, I'll try to actually show Android, but I don't think I'll have time if I do that now. Problem is that the magnification focus does not follow the TalkBack focus like it does on iOS. So you can't really use Zoom and TalkBack at the same time. It's not going to work very well. So accessible Android browser. Since Android has an open app ecosystem, you can install whatever you want. And that includes multiple accessible browsers. So I tested some, and the winner in the test is Firefox. Mozilla has the biggest commitment to accessibility in the open source world. And you want to get the nightly version. The nightly version is just the latest developer build. It's going to have the latest and greatest ARIA features. For instance, ARIA Describe I supported on nightly. And eventually those features will make it into the regular Android version. Second place is the default browser app that comes with your Android phone. It has a special local context menu that's not available in Firefox. And with your swipe up to the right or left or something gesture, you can get to list navigation, character word line, granularity, that sort of thing. Third place is Chrome and Dolphin. They seem to be accessible, but they're both very buggy. So I'll try it in Chrome one day and it'll be accessible, then I'll try it the next time, it's not. And I have to hit refresh before I can even put my focus into the web view. So it's very buggy. Interestingly, the HTML5 telephone input, TalkBack will tell you that this is a telephone number input. No other screen reader I've found alerts you to the fact that this is an input type equals tel. ARIA expanded equals true and false works in TalkBack, and ARIA expanded fails in iOS, even in iOS 7. And Paul mentioned bug reports. I put in a bug report with Apple, bugreporter.apple.com, and I think they fixed it in WebKit, but I don't know when it will ever come back into iOS. I don't know how long that takes. So it might not be till iOS 8, which is really holding ARIA back by not implementing it, because ARIA expanded is a really useful property. Required attributes are spoken to TalkBack if you do ARIA required or HTML5 required. HTML5 validation actually works in some of the browsers like Chrome. It's just the validation may not be accessible. The error messages aren't spoken automatically. I don't know about Firefox, so it might be different there. So you do have quick navigation keys in Firefox. B for button, G for graphic, H for heading, if you have a keyboard connected. There are also some other quick navigation options where you use 3-finger swipe down to cycle through the navigation options. So you can cycle from headings to landmarks, and then you use 3-finger swipe forward or backwards to go through those semantic elements. Link to Firefox Nightly. Got linked to Marco Ziti's blog post. He works at Mozilla, is blind, and he knows way more about Android accessibility than I do. He tweets in English as well, so you can follow him on Twitter. Fragmentation is a big problem for Android, and it's a problem for accessibility. So if you want to do Android accessibility testing, do not go to AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile and buy a phone from them, because it's going to come with junk on it. Basically like when you buy a PC from Best Buy and it has Norton and all this other junk. They customize the Android skin. So HTC has HTC Sense custom user interface, and Samsung has one called TouchWiz, and these will break the accessibility of Android. So if you get one of those carrier phones, you're going to have to basically jailbreak it, install a custom ROM to get back to the default Android OS. What you want to do is buy straight from Google. This is a Google Nexus something or another. It has the Google logo on it, and it comes straight from the Google Play Store. Unsubsidized, full price. And there's also a program called Google Play devices, where you can get the latest hot Android phones, the HTC One or the Samsung S4. You can get those with stock Android rather than the carrier junk. You have to buy it from the Google Play Store there, and you're paying full price. But that's what you want to do if you want to do native Android accessibility or web Android accessibility. Don't disable pinch to zoom. Everybody, a lot of people disable pinch to zoom on mobile sites. That is a WCAG violation. You're supposed to be able to increase your text size up to 200%. This is the bad code that you do not want to use. Maximum scale 1, which stops you from scaling it. User scalable, no. This is bad, don't do this. Don't restrict your users. So how do you test for mobile browsers and WebView apps? Because a lot of apps now are hybrid or just a WebView app. It's HTML and a wrapper like PhoneGap. How do you ensure accessibility of those WebView apps? You just follow WCAG. Pretty simple. All the standard web accessibility practices that you already know also apply to TalkBack and VoiceOver when it's rendered as a WebView app. So, just follow WCAG. And this is showing here the mobile accessibility debugger with a mobile Safari's web inspector. You can see it says MI5 iOS 7, that's my iPhone's name. And I'm viewing jQueryMobile.com, the forums. I was trying to debug some problems. So I'll talk about those in a little bit, but this way I can edit the ARIA code on my phone and then test it with VoiceOver right on the spot without having to actually upload HTML and refresh it. So ARIA, there's tons and tons of stuff on ARIA, and this was not my talk, so I did not go into detail on it. But I wanted to point some things out, some of the more popular that relate to mobile. Live regions are alerts, which are very interesting. And I've got a demo here. Trying to get live regions to work is a little complex. These are the combinations that I was able to get them working in. And so we'll do a live test.
Safari. Simple form tab, first name, required, last email, submit, button. Submit, please enter your first name. Please enter your last name. Please enter your email address.
So when I hit submit, the error messages were then injected into a container with a role equals alert already present in the DOM at page load. And that caused them to be spoken automatically. You notice my focus was not sent to the new information because I don't need to. This is spoken automatically.
Alert, act selected.
Landmarks. And of course, I've done a little demonstration of that already. I stole this image from html5accessibility.com showing this is typically how you set up your landmarks on your site. Your banner, your nav, main, footer, all that. And how you navigate by landmarks with the rotor. And here's code that I would typically use. HTML5 nav element, give it a role of navigation, and then give it a ARIA label of site navigation, because this is not my maybe sidebar navigation or sub navigation. Maybe have a breadcrumb, you could call that breadcrumb if you wanted. Footer, HTML5 footer, role of content info, and ARIA label of footer, because I don't think content info makes much sense. And so in ARIA, what you need to do is provide name, role, state, and value. You can do this with ARIA-labels to create an accessible name. You can give an item roles, like role equals button. And make sure you never include the role inside the accessible name. If you said accessible name button and it had a role button, it would say button twice, and you don't want to do that. And state, ARIA-checked equals true, false. ARIA expanded equals true or false. Not all ARIA properties work in all mobile devices. Like I said, ARIA expanded fails in iOS. And on Android, you have a lot of different browsers. I have a link to much more detailed presentation on ARIA in JavaScript called Modern Web Accessibility. I call ARIA the modern web accessibility technique. It's basically the future of accessibility in my view. Custom UI elements, which of course is one of the biggest problems with the modern web. Everybody decided they could make buttons that look like anything they want out of divs and spans and IMGs. Or A's with no href. If you don't have the href, it's not focusable. So, my favorite example is Sencha. Here's one from Sencha EXTJS. They have a button here, it's a little settings cog thing, and it's created as a IMG element. Here's the code for it. IMG role equals presentation, no accessible name in there. They suppressed the image role, didn't give it a button role. It's not focusable. If you try to tab through this page, nothing is focusable. So this is a fake button. Fake buttons can be made accessible if you want to. It's a little bit of work. And you would say, like, here's my div, and give it a role of button. So now the screen reader thinks it's a button. It's still not focusable. So I have to give it tab index equals 0 to make it focusable. And then the only other problem is when I press enter on that button, nothing's going to happen. Because we have no keyboard JavaScript event. We probably only have a mouse event handler. Because nobody uses their keyboard when they test out their websites. Everybody uses the mouse. So you can't just put role equals button on your fake button and that's it. No, it's not going to work. You need device independent JavaScript event handlers. And here is some code, show you a little bit in jQuery. So I get the ID of my fake button, and I'm going to attach a key up event handler. If the key code is 13, which is the enter key, then I'm just going to pop an alert just for testing. I didn't put spacebar though, but according to the ARIA spec, you should also implement the spacebar event handler, because that's how buttons work. I don't think it's a super big deal if you don't, but that's the warning. And I also have the click handler. So, this is a lot of extra code to make this fake button accessible. You could just use a real button, and life is way easier. A button or an input is already focusable natively. Also added some text size. This is a little small. So also the buttons are inputs. They also implement on-click JavaScript events and a keyboard accessible manner. So you don't have to create an additional key up event handler or 2 additional key up event handlers. Just do your on click and you're done.
Do you recommend key up or key down, or do you have a...
Dylan recommended key up to me, so that's why I did that. I see key down a lot. I think key up because you want it to wait till they release the key before it fires the event. I don't know this
I think
specific.
some browsers might not handle it, yeah.
Okay. Well, as long as you do one of them and it works with the keyboard, that's all that matters really. Okay, you can do an href as your fake button, which is it's good. It's focusable. Hrefs are focusable. On click works with the href, but you still have to add roll equals button because the screen reader still thinks it's a link, and spacebar is not going to work on the href. Now, buttons can be styled any way you want nowadays. It's easy to style a button. It's an empty slate just like a span or div. So don't let that be the excuse for not using buttons. Audio video accessibility. So you have the audio tag. Just playing some audio. Very simple. And HTML5 audio has fallback, so you try an OGG and try an MP3, and if none of those work, then you have a fallback that says you don't support audio. The video element. So, no Flash necessary. Of course, it won't work on iOS. Here's the video, just like audio. You can also fall back to Flash and with HTML5 video to take care of the people trapped in Internet Explorer still. Here's a demo video with closed captions for people who are deaf and closed audio description track for people who are blind and need a description of the scenery, what's going on in the scene. Now I'm not using HTML5 for this. This is QuickTime format with the captions wrapped into the QuickTime file. But this works on iOS 6. So if you need 6 support, you have to use something like this. I'll just show you how it looks with the different tracks. So I can pick audio with descriptions, and I can pick, I want English closed caption. I don't know where the captions are working. Might be a bug. Maybe because I'm connected to the projector. Okay, but you heard the audio description, so that was cool. Oh, there's the caption. It didn't have full screen for some reason. I have instructions for how you can create a video like this. Now there's a bug in Safari and VoiceOver for iOS where I cannot, okay, audio and video elements are placed in the bottom of the DOM. So it's really strange that you have to cycle through every element until you actually get to those audio video elements. And I cannot give them a unique identifier. I can't give them an accessible name. So there's no way to say this is a certain type of audio. You just have to put a heading above it or something like that. ARIA label doesn't work, title doesn't work. Transcripts, captions. So, you have to provide a transcript for WCAG, text description, audio description, captioning. Have a bunch of links to examples of these. And now for the HTML5 WebVTT, which is brand new in iOS 7, have a demo of that as well. The internet will work. Let me try opening it in a new tab. Okay. Oh. Y'all can't see the tracks, I'm sorry. When I'm full screen, like you're not seeing that I can select the audio description and the caption tracks. So that's kind of weird. Let me just see if they even will display. They're not working in full screen connected to a projector. It works full screen fine until I connect it to a projector. I haven't been able to test that out yet. But of course, I control the style of the closed captioning. You can change it to whatever color you want. This is the large text sample. So moving on forms, validation, usability. There were lots of talks on forms already, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Main thing is, why are people still not using HTML5 input types? Input type equals tell, email, all that. You go fill out a form on your iPhone to type in your phone number, and then the first keyboard you get is the ABCD keyboard. That's, very bad usability. You want to get a keyboard optimized for the type of input you're entering. So, I have slides on this, HTML5, ARIA forms with jQuery validation, some blog posts. I've shown this accessible form. What I'll talk about though is placing the labels above the input for usability, low vision usability, mobile usability. This was the old Gmail sign-up form. And so when you type in your first name and last name, the iPhone zooms in to the input, but the labels are off to the left, so they're cut off completely. So don't do that. Placing the label directly above the input will improve the experience. Here's the new Gmail, taken on iOS 7. And they've changed it. Looks a lot better now. Data tables, we'll talk about that a little bit. Now you can use ARIA. You can take two bad data tables and combine them into one data table using ARIA. You can also use ARIA to define the table semantics all by itself. So you can turn divs into a data table as far as screen readers are concerned. So simple data tables usually just require table headers. Scope is not always required. Scope is smart though, so you can explicitly define that this is the column header, or these are the row headers. Complex data tables need the headers attribute, where I have two headers at the top and another header at the left. I need to point to all three of them. However, this does not work in iOS, but I just wanted to point it out. And then use table captions. Caption is like usually the heading right above your table, and I also give them a heading semantic as well as a caption. Now, layout tables should never have data table attributes. If you're using a table for layout, that's okay, actually. Just give it no data table semantics, no summary, no scope, no headers. But really, you should use CSS. This is in 2000. Here's a table accessibility test case that I've had to create to try to debug, voiceover issues.
Safari, corner, table start. Home button to the left, bananas, 230.
So when I focused into the cell 230, it read my column header, bananas, but it did not read my row header because I used TD scope equals row. Scope equals row does not work on iOS.
Bananas, Q2, 230. Q3, 210. Bananas, Q2, 230.
So this one uses TH as the row and column headers and it works with VoiceOver. At the first cell I focus on, it reads the column header, then the row header.
Handwriting button, image of bird, rows, pairing, rows, bird. Navigation,
So vertical navigation, I can go up and down.
Q3, Q4, 300, table end. Oranges, 150, apples, 140, order, Q4.
So that's how you navigate tables and VoiceOver.
Q3, 230,
Notice this bug.
bananas, Q2, 200.
It said bananas Q2. It thought that I was in the bananas column, and it thought that I was in the Q2 row. Why is this? Because we left an empty cell in the top left, like A1 in Excel. This is just a bug. So what you can do is put a non-breaking space there, and it'll stop the bug. Or like in my previous example, I gave that column an actual header.
Page 2 of 3, 180.
Here's the headers attribute. It doesn't work at all.
180.
I was trying some really weird tables that I've seen before. It doesn't work. Now these methods work in other screen readers though.
Page 3 of 3, oranges, 180.
And I was trying to do with this table to give each print data cell a unique accessible name by pointing to its row and column headers, but that doesn't work in iOS.
Alert, app selected.
Internationalization, language, verbosity. VoiceOver has 36 languages and dialects. This is iOS 6 language router. This is iOS 7 where you choose your language and dialects. And I can choose certain languages for my rotor. So I like all the English dialects, Australian, British, Irish, South African. And added Italian and French Canadian as well. So the way you take advantage of this feature in screen readers is you set the lang attribute to your whole document. Lang equals en-us, en-es, or something like that. But all the codes are out there, BCP 42 or something. Now, here's a demo of that, which is always fun. The demo is from JAWS, from Freedom Scientific, and how JAWS switches languages. NVDA switches languages as well.
Safari, language, then we write, my computer speaks English, quotation mark.
So each of these different languages are tagged in the appropriate language code.
Then we write the same sentence in French.
Mon ordinateur parle français.
And then it's static. Mi computador habla español. Meu computador fala português. Mein Computer spricht Deutsch. Mój komputer говорит по-русски. And il mio computer suona. And il mio computer parla italiano. Alert. Accent selected.
So this is what you need to do to anytime you have varieties of languages on your page. Otherwise, you can just set a single language attribute on the document. CSS3 speech verbosity. This is something that actually only works in iOS. It's a W3C recommendation. CSS3 speech module. What it does is allow you to control the punctuation. So I can say, for an address, a phone, or zip code, I want you to speak the digits. Don't tell me it's 1852, tell me 1800, whatever. And for code, I can say speak literal punctuation. So I want to hear the semicolons, I want to hear the quotes, the brackets. And I'll show you how that sounds. Hopefully it works. Sometimes it's buggy.
Less than slash style grade of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 example street.
Okay, so it didn't say 1200, 345, whatever.
Austin, TX 78756.
Phone example.
Phone 51255512334. Link. Phone number code exit. UI image view start U equals left bracket UI image view alloc right bracket in it with image colon image right bracket semicolon view period accessibility label equals it quotation mark Apple logo quotation mark semicolon.
Okay, so this is how you do native iOS accessibility, and you give an image an accessible name.
Address example no verbosity.
Here.
Header level 2.
We'll see without the verbosity of it now. We'll see.
12,345 example street.
Okay, so without the CSS3 speech verbosity, now it's saying 12,000 instead of 123.
Austin, Texas 78756.
So it's smart enough to know that's a zip code on its own. I didn't have to control that.
Phone example number 51255.
And it was smart enough to do the phone. So really, it was only the address that we really needed to.
Code example number UI image view start U equals UI image view alloc in it with image view accessibility label equals at Apple logo.
So here, we didn't hear the brackets, quotations. So it does seem to be very useful for code samples and addresses.
Alert. Act selected.
So hopefully, other screen readers and browsers will adopt this in the future. Responsive web design. I don't do a lot of responsive web design, but it's the hot topic nowadays. Although it's been out forever. I'm more of a fan of mobile rather than responsive, but a lot of people want a solution to say, I have one page and it changes the way it looks on every possible device you can imagine. I don't have a mobile-only site and a desktop-only site. Although having a mobile-only site, you can actually increase the usability much more than with responsive design. That's a different debate. The accessibility issues are collapsing content. You see in this image of responsive, in the desktop, you have all your containers. As you go to iPad, those containers shift, or maybe they collapse. On the iPhone, you lose even more containers, or they collapse. So state indication of expand or collapse, focusability, keyboard activation role, touch-friendly responsive menus. You see these, you have a main site nav that goes across, and then when you collapse into iPhone view, the nav breaks down into one thing that is expandable and collapsible. Usually those are not accessible. Pinch to zoom, don't disable that. If content is hidden in a responsive view, make sure it's hidden from the screen reader. Sometimes the screen reader may still pick up that text that you hid incorrectly. jQuery Mobile does have responsive built in, and does have some problems with it as well, so I'll show you one of those problems. The responsive sliding panels, they pop in from the left, like nice responsive design, like Facebook practically invented that, I guess. And then here's one on the right. Well, let's turn on VoiceOver and see what happens.
Safari main overlay link
Of course, it looks like a button to me, no link.
overlay jQuery mobile framework heading level 1 link image landmark.
So my focus is underneath the panel that slid in.
Navigation, search,
And I'm
submit,
just
submit.
swiping through.
HTML5 video,
Yeah,
one
where
HTML,
am I?
select, close tab, reload. Close tab for panels, jQuery mobile demos. Alert, app selected.
Let me refresh this. And it's also a problem when it comes out from the right.
VoiceOver on. Close
everybody.
panel, jQuery mobile framework, heading level 1.
Of course,
Image.
as I close the panel, it sent my focus to the top of the page, so I lost my place in the site.
Alert, access selected.
Usually the way you can send focus back, if you get a variable, if I grab this as a variable in JavaScript, and then the user closes it, I can just send it back to it using IDs or something. So now, talk a lot more about jQuery Mobile. Here's the logo. It's widely tested on many internet-connected devices. You'll see screenshots here of Kindle, black and white Kindle, Android tablets, Kindle Fire, iPad, BlackBerry, Palm, all sorts of weird phones. It's been optimized for all these devices. They've done the testing for you. You don't need to do the testing. It produces semantic HTML. It's built on semantic HTML. Clean semantic HTML ensures compatibility with pretty much any web-enabled device. Uses progressive enhancement and away ARIA. So not many frameworks actually use ARIA. And jQuery Mobile uses it as a page on accessibility. Form elements from jQuery Mobile is a good thing to demo to see how it works.
VoiceOver on. Alert, reminder, close. Sub main. Page to link button, link.
Okay. So it says link button link.
Link button, link.
Probably should have a button roll since they're calling it a button.
Button element,
Button element doesn't say the button roll.
button element, button.
Okay, now I'm on the actual input button. And what they did here is that this button element
Button element,
is a span. And this is kind of how they're controlling the visual style. The accessible part is
button element.
the actual button underneath it. So for screen readers, I'd want to hide the span from them and only give them the actual accessible button. So I was able to test out connecting my phone to mobile Safari Web Inspector, and I just put ARIA hidden equals true on the span, and now we go from two focusable elements to one with the correct role.
Submit button, hitting, icon only button, link. Icon only button,
Okay, so this one said icon only button 3 times. So there's definitely some room for
page
improvement.
320.
But
Application.
there's some really amazing
50%,
stuff as well.
Adjustable, landmark,
Now,
50. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
first thing you hear is application. I don't think it needs to be an application landmark, but it did say the correct value. Slider, it said it was adjustable. The only problem is that the normal way you adjust sliders is you swipe up or down to adjust.
Name, period, application, slider, 50%, adjustable, landmark, handwriting, lowercase, adjust value,
Oh, yeah,
period,
just
adjust
value.
value. 50%, 50%.
It won't actually adjust it like a real slider, a native slider, but I can do double tap and hold as a pass through to actually interact with the slider. Now I'm moving it with VoiceOver with my finger, and then when I release it, it will
Slider, 81%,
it'll at least
adjustable,
update
landmark,
to the correct value.
81. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value. Name, slider, 81. Multi-line text field.
Now you can also just manually type in your slider value, which is great. You have multiple ways to interact with it.
Page 4 of 20. Page 5 of 20. Application. Image.
This flip switch is like a iOS 6 on-off control, switch control, but it just says image.
Image.
It has an image role. It's a few focusable elements.
Flip switch. 0%. Adjustable. Off. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
So now I'm actually on the part that has the accessible name.
switch, 0%, adjustable. Name, I, checkbox, check.
So this is a
Double tap
checkbox
to toggle setting,
that's been styled to look really cool.
uncheck.
And it's accessible because it's built on a real checkbox.
Cat, radio button, check, 1 of 4.
Radio
Dog,
buttons.
radio button, check.
So these are built on real radio buttons, so they retain the semantics.
Page 8 of 20. Select native menu, standard, 7-day, pop-up button.
So this is a native
Double tap
select.
to activate the picker.
It's not a fake select. And this is what you want.
Select. Selected, standard, 7-day.
Because it pops up the native select. So this may look different in a different browser, but it's accessible. If you create your own fake select, you're going to have to implement the accessibility, and that's going to be a lot of work.
Dismiss pop-up. jQuick, page 20, page, main. Range sliders offer 2 handles to set a minute max value along page. There, 1 a.m. Selected, today, button. Rows 3 to 4 of 6.
Okay, of course.
Alert, accent selected. Voice over off.
Oh, shit. I just had Apple's blue screen of death, which is the Apple logo. So yeah, it crashed. iOS 7 is still buggy, very buggy. But iOS 6 is also buggy. There's always bugs. Okay, let's just move back to finish this off. So, areas for improvement. Buttons should not be two focusable elements. In here, I'm showing how I applied ARIA hidden equals true onto the span. So I made it one single button element. This is what the screen reader wants. Input type equals button. And accessible name is derived from the value. And I'm not sure that flip switches should be identified as sliders or have an application landmark. I'll show you why. Here's a flip switch. This is OS 10 speech output, and it says leaving name landmark, entering application landmark on flip switch slider. And so I got rid of application landmark. I changed it to a checkbox using ARIA, and I got rid of all the other ARIA related to sliders. And now it just says flip switch checkbox, or checkbox. So I think that sounds better. It's a Boolean on-off control, so I think a checkbox makes sense. jQuery mobile dialogues don't close with the escape key. I implemented the escape key on my jQuery mobile slide myself. Of course, buttons in jQuery mobile are not shown as buttons. They still have a role of length. So also in my slideshow, I applied Rollicka's button to all the buttons manually. Or I did it with jQuery. Nice thing about jQuery is I can say, just give me these 10 elements and apply button roll to all 10 of them, rather than manually editing the code. So that makes life easier. The hamburger menu on jQuery doesn't have a state, like an expanded or collapsed state. And no focus indicator. This is the voiceover focus indicator. This is not like a keyboard focus indicator. Okay, there was another issue with the table reflow in jQuery Mobile, and I had no idea why, because we had a perfectly semantically structured table, but to the screen readers, it thought it wasn't a table. It said table not found, even though this was a perfect table. So someone smarter than me on Twitter, James Meriden, tweeted me the answer that I didn't notice, is that there was a bug caused by display table -row -group being applied to the table. That seems to suppress the table semantics to the accessibility API. So if you go into your web inspector, you can just uncheck this CSS style to test it out with a screen reader. We're not actually editing the code, just testing. and then bam, it works. So now it sees it as an actual table with 5 columns and 11 rows. Here's some real-world examples of jQuery Mobile and the jQuery Mobile Gallery. These will all be, mostly accessible, other than some of the other things that I mentioned that were lacking. And non-semantic mobile frameworks like Sencha. I'll show you. Sencha touches kitchen sink. It's supposed to look like iOS 7, but it doesn't. Oh wait, let me get into it a little bit. Let's see. Okay, now we're in iOS 7. So there's the back button, iOS 7 back button.
Home button to the left. Back. Quotation mark.
So this is actually 2 elements. The arrow is called quotation mark,
Back.
and the back button is called back. It has no button roll.
Forms. Toolbar inputs. Text search.
I cannot focus, I can't focus on this switch control at all.
This is a
It's
simple
not
example of
focused.
fields within text. Multi-line text. This is a simple text.
It
This
skips
is a
right
simple
over it.
example. Alert. Selected.
So Sencha, they only care about visual look. They're trying to copy the iOS 7 design, and that's what they want. They say, I will make you a native app in a web view, and you don't need to do native development. So that's their philosophy. They copied Apple's design. What they forgot was Apple's accessibility. So that's what they're missing. This is the fake buttons code. It's a span. And you'll see the class has the name button inside the class, so it's obviously a button in their mind. They just didn't put the button roll. And here is that switch control, which is just a div with a bunch of stuff in it, with no semantics. Am I done? This is my last slide. Okay. Sorry, guys. How do you test for accessibility? Turn on your screen reader. Turn on Zoom, possibly. You can plug a keyboard into the iPhone. Explore by touch, move your fingers everywhere. You can enable the screen curtain, that'll make it go black, and then you can't actually see it.
Safari. Home button to the left. Speech off.
Not that
Speech
one.
on. Screen curtain on.
Okay.
Or practice voiceover gestures. Go to settings greater than general, greater than
So
accessibility,
now-
greater than voiceover.
You can really have an experience of a blind user. The screen has been disabled. All you have is voiceover in your fingers.
Just speech off. Speech on. Screen curtain off.
Okay. It's like a 3-finger quadruple tap or something.
Alert. App selected.
Okay, so you can never remember 3-finger quadruple tap, so I have everything here for you. All the finger gestures, and then all the keyboard commands. You have a little bit more capabilities when plugged in with the keyboard as well. And that's it. Thanks, guys.